How's it going, gamers? Welcome to the dojo. Today we can finally talk about the Nintendo Switch 2, as the announcement was official as of this morning with the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, as to what we thought we knew about the Switch 2, what was confirmed, and kind of everything mostly in between. And a lot of it is, well, mixed opinions gathered from social media and my own thoughts and opinions included. So, unfortunately, I had to wake up bright and early this morning because these happen at 6 a.m. PST.
Alright. Not gonna lie. It is 5:59 in the morning. I can't even focus.
To partake in the hour-long Switch 2 presentation, which for the most part went smooth in the beginning and then had some hiccups towards the end, unfortunately, when they were demoing the game announcements. And it left with a lot of questions, and questions that actually were not answered initially in the Switch 2 Direct itself, like the price of the actual Switch. They waited till hours later to kind of officially make the announcements, and whether that was due to tariff concerns that were being ironed out elsewhere in the world, or just, not wanting to announce it in that actual presentation, who knows. But here's what we know in the immediate of the Switch 2. The new hardware is going to be officially available at launch June 5th of this year, so only a couple months out. It's going to be priced at $450. That's just the baseline model, just the console itself. They are going to be offering a special edition bundle with the new Mario Kart World, so the new flagship Mario Kart game, at I believe $500 if I'm not mistaken, which is definitely the better bundle to go for. Even if you're not a fan of Mario Kart, you can sell it for more than that at that point. But here's what we know about the actual specs. 1080p display, so doubled resolution in handheld mode from 720p, 120 hertz screen, 7.9-inch LCD screen, so bigger than the previous edition or the original Nintendo Switch. It's funny to say previous edition because it's the only edition that's existed, unless you count things like the Nintendo Switch OLED. But essentially, the console that has been out for years and years at this point, right? This is the second generation of a widely successful Nintendo Switch launch. And it's still rocking that 7.9 LCD screen. LCD screen is going to support HDR and 120 hertz refresh rate, like I said. And then you're getting the new Joy-Con controllers that are kind of updated in certain ways where they're bigger. It's still mostly the same control scheme. You do have this new C button, which is their kind of social button for sharing and interacting with friends. Internally, you are getting a big jump to 256 gigabytes of storage, so that's 8x more than the standard Nintendo Switch model came out with, so just much more room for games, especially if the games are going to be a bit bigger due to the graphic updates and whatnot. And then you are getting 4K output via the dock, so 4K upscale resolution, that's 4 times 1080p when you're in the dock mode. And the dock itself is even fancier because it has a fan in it to help with cooling and whatnot, all in this new-ish design. Design-wise, it is, in all intents and purposes, the Nintendo Switch muted. It took away a lot of the color, a lot of the kind of fun, in my opinion, in the Nintendo Switch, and it goes for this truly monochromatic look in its design here. And they're just calling it, again, the Nintendo Switch 2. But, as everybody's saying, this has a lot and very, very big shoes to fill. There's been a lot of hype around this, given that Nintendo has not released a new console in, again, 6+ years. And the new hardware here under the hood, the improved graphics and processors and all that good stuff, generally isn't something Nintendo spends a lot of time talking about, right? Because Nintendo's never the console that's going to go out there and have the fanciest new, GPUs and CPUs. They do a lot more with less, is typically what they're known for, and they rely heavily on their IP and their gaming titles and their experiences to get them by, because they have that IP that nobody else has, right? Years and years of characters like Zelda and Mario and Donkey Kong and all these different titles that you can't get anywhere else for the most part. And that's typically what's carried them through, right? Leading up to the Switch, one of the most successful Nintendo consoles was the Nintendo Wii, right? A console that really appealed to the masses and focused on just a non-conventional way to play video games with the motion controls, but presented in a way where the every person could pick it up and enjoy it, and it was family friendly. They followed up that huge success with the Wii U, which all intents and purposes is what the original Nintendo Switch idea was, right? They try to take what was already a very popular console launch with the Wii and really iterate on it And maybe some will argue it was, ahead of its time, but obviously in a numbers perspective, it was a pretty big flop. This tried to do a lot with a form factor that was kind of, not ready for that time. It had this external screen, and you could kind of have this touchpad and interact with it in different ways with the game and play it in kind of this handheld mode. And all of that leads to what we eventually have now with the Nintendo Switch and now the Switch 2. But the argument is it enough? Is it enough to capitalize on what the Switch's success was? You have these new internal features with the Switch 2, like the new Joy-Cons are having this new mouse mode where you can kind of use a Joy-Con in a flat plane like this. And, it's an interesting new kind of gimmick. Obviously, PC gamers are very used to that, but is it something that a lot of people are going to use on the Nintendo Switch? Who knows, right? Like, is it going to be practical for people to, like, play and use their Joy-Cons like that? Again, we'll see that in actual practicality. Now, this is where the dominoes start to fall. You have this new hardware. You have this, finally, we have this official launch date. This thing is real. It's coming out. Well, what are we going to play on it, right? That's the big question. What are the updates? What am I going to get on the new Switch 2? The initial flagship game that was announced was Mario Kart World, which everybody was, again, super excited for. This open world Mario Kart, up to 24 players. That in itself, probably my most, exciting announcement of the keynote. And then typically they build on that with a couple other flagship releases, in particular their own IP. This time around, they lean on a couple different things. They obviously have a bunch of partners releasing like standard games like Hades 2 and upcoming games like, or recent games like Split Fiction. Like all the popular titles are also going to make their way to a Switch 2 like port. But then you had exclusives that nobody really saw coming, like, was it Duskborn or Duskblood from FromSoft, which is, known for Elden Ring and the Souls-like games and Dark Souls, releasing what is a Switch exclusive for the Switch 2, which, again, in my opinion, I'm sure it's going to be a great game, Duskbloods, but doesn't necessarily fit the, I think, ideal Nintendo Switch audience. I might be wrong, right? I don't necessarily know if everybody's going to go out of their way to get a Switch 2 to play Duskbloods, and maybe wait until this makes its way to other platforms if it eventually will. But, that was interesting to see them be one of their announcements. Outside of that, there's other features I didn't mention here that the Switch 2 does bring that are quote-unquote new. It has this whole setup because, again, much like what I just talked about, the Wii U and what this had a camera built into the gamepad. This had a microphone built into the gamepad, and you can do things like interact and use that here while you're in handheld mode. Or even when it was docked, you could kind of use it to, speak and do voice commands for certain games and things like that. They're now bringing that officially to the Switch 2 with this crazy camera accessory. It's literally a webcam that you have to buy separately for $50 that you can connect via USB-C to your Switch. And this allows you to do what they're calling game chat. And this is going to be super interesting. Essentially, it's like Discord for your Nintendo Switch.
They like bringing back that, everybody see that frame drop? Look at the frames in the bottom. If you can't see it, like, they're like showing what it would look like, I guess, when you're going live, but the frame drop here is rough. Which Nintendo has shied away from quite a while. They don't have voice chat in their games. I will say game chat is local to the sense of like playing with your friends. It's not necessarily meant for like online play, right? They still got to keep it kind of family friendly. But you can buy this webcam in combination with the microphone that's in the Switch to now have more of that social gaming aspect with your friends. But is all of this stuff actually enough? Is it enough to justify the $450 price point? And at least with social media right now, a lot of people are arguing no, because this is just the first domino to fall, like I said earlier, because what was also announced was they are going to have these game key cards, essentially, or these game cards that are the new physical Switch 2 games, right? They're just these red cartridges versus the standard black cartridges. And the games nowadays that were released are bumping up in price. So, for example, Mario Kart World is going to have a $80 digital edition. I think the physical edition is $90, if I'm not mistaken. $70 for Donkey Kong Bonanza, which was another one that was announced. So like at this point, in terms of just the pure hardware cost at $450 and then the bundle for $500, you're better off getting the Mario Kart World bundle for $500, and again just selling off that game if you don't want it, because it's worth more in of itself. But yeah, at $450 for comparison, you're looking at a PlayStation 5, which goes for $399 currently for the digital edition, an Xbox Series X, $499 for the baseline terabyte edition, which is obviously way more powerful. But you can make the argument those are not desktop, but those are stationary consoles. They're a different purpose, and that'd be fair because a Switch is versatile in that you can dock it, play it, move it on the go, and that's where something like a Steam Deck probably comes in. And at the LCD model, $399, it is now cheaper than what will be the new Switch 2. And the OLED model is just $100 shy of what the Switch 2 will cost. If you throw in games in there, it's, again, $50 off for something that is equally as if not more powerful from a hardware perspective, has a better screen with the OLED, and offers you instant library access to a lot of games that you may already have if you were a PC gamer. And that is, again, a big if. Because at the end of the day, the markets for these other consoles maybe is not the ideal market at the end of the day for what Nintendo is targeting, and that is family, younger audiences, and so on, families who are going to want to buy this for their kids on the holidays. But you have to consider now at $450, this is going to be something that isn't as maybe family friendly in terms of affordability and cost and so on and so forth, not to mention with the $70, $80, $90 video games on top of that, that adds up very quickly. And to offset this, it doesn't get any better in that Nintendo also had a game that they're calling their Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. And this is a prime example of things that drove a lot of people up the wall, in that this is their kind of like demo way to kind of get used to all the new features and have a bunch of mini games to kind of calibrate and test out your new Joy-Cons. This game is going to come out with the Switch 2, and it's going to be a paid game. They haven't announced the price, at least I don't think from what I've seen. But even if this thing is more than $10, it's not worth it at that point. Like it's kind of like if they didn't bundle Wii Sports with the Wii and they made everybody go and buy it at launch, it wouldn't be as successful as it was, I would argue, because like that was such a perfect representation of what the console could be and the possibilities at launch. If this was to be even a fraction of that, it should have just been a free release that gets bundled with the Switch 2 at that price point, in my opinion. So charging anything for this is crazy. But you take that a step further, they are updating a lot of games in their current IP. So Nintendo's IP like Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, a couple other games are getting the Switch 2 upgrade. Some games are getting like the Switch 2 upgrade for free, but even their own flagship games are getting like increased frame rates and so on and so forth. And if you have the game already and then you get a Switch 2, to upgrade to those what they're calling, Switch 2 upgrade packs, that's also going to be a cost. And I believe, at least as of current, those are not even announced right now. So again, you own a game, you buy the new console. If you want to get the updated graphics and potential that the new console has to offer, you got to pay an upgrade fee. And let's hypothetically say that upgrade pack is, which it's probably not going to be, but let's say it's $20, right? Somewhat of a fair price if you have a game you really like and you want to get that upgraded frame rate and maybe some new features. Some people can swallow that, I guess, at the end of the day. But if it's anything more than that, it's already half of what the original game cost you in the first place. So you're nearly rebuying it. Again, is this new practice? Not necessarily. There's a PS4 and went to PS5. It's just for Nintendo to do it on their own flagship titles. Like at that point, I feel like, again, for your own titles, might as well just give the upgrade packs for free if somebody buys a Switch 2 or has a Switch 2 because they already bought the game to begin with. All this stuff just doesn't rub people the right way, and it all kind of adds up, and it adds up in dollars, and in that capacity. Now, I say all this to know that I'm going to go out and pre-order a Switch 2 at launch. I'm definitely going to be picking one up, and I am excited for some of the titles to come, like the Mario Kart Worlds and some of the new things they announced, like Kirby Air Riders and all this other stuff. But I think, honestly, the things that got me most excited were things that weren't necessarily pertinent to the Switch 2. Mario Kart World is obviously going to be the new Mario Kart game, and I'm excited for that. And I would argue, like, even in a standalone game like Mario Kart, I would probably pay $80 for a game like that because of the replay value I get out of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as is. Like, that's a game I've played for years and years and years. And, you know, at $70, $60, $80, like, yes, it's an expensive game, don't get me wrong, but I get my replay value out of that. Whereas I feel like other games, like these other flagships, are going to be $70, potentially $80 or $90 that I won't get that, you know, type of playtime and play value out of. Yeah, that's a crazy kind of pill to swallow for these kind of cartridges and so on and so forth. Other exciting announcements: the GameCube emulation is finally coming through NSO. So here's an exclusive Switch 2 membership feature. We got it. We're finally getting it to Nintendo Switch, and it's exclusively for Nintendo Switch 2, which was interesting. So Nintendo Switch users won't be able to take advantage of like the GameCube releases. So that's finally happening. Games like Zelda Wind Waker, Luigi's Mansion, and all of that are now officially coming out exclusively only on the Switch 2. Whether or not that's like a graphical emulation thing, who knows? I think it's more just a marketing thing at that. But yeah, all of this kind of adds up, and all the hype that was surrounding this big announcement, this new Switch, and hopefully we're going to get some major titles out at launch. I think a lot of that hype is going to die down, just surrounded by the fact of the price points and everything that kind of adds up. Look, gamers and Nintendo fans alike are going to go in swarms and droves and buy this. Don't get me wrong, myself included. But what I am interested to see is that the mass appeal and the mass effect of like what other just genuine consumers are going to do, and if this is going to have as much or even a shade of success that the Nintendo Switch had, and how it compares to over time and in the years as it kind of rolls out. It's inevitable we're probably going to get a Switch 2 OLED, and some people really felt like that should have been, especially at this price point, one of the things they prioritize. I don't necessarily agree nor disagree with that. I do think that, yes, it's a much higher price point that will kind of alienate some consumers at that price point when you add everything else in. But again, Nintendo is Nintendo, and they do have that strong IP, those strong titles behind it that hopefully by release time we'll have more to kind of back it up. I think that kind of helps ease the pain a little bit, because if you remember with like the PlayStation 3, it was a super, at the time, considered overpriced console that didn't necessarily have games to back it up. In this case, this is not extremely exorbitantly overpriced, but it is definitely pricier than its original, release of the Nintendo Switch, with some titles to back it up. But again, they have a lot of ground to cover. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on the Switch 2 announcement. What do you think? Leave it down in the comments below, gamers. And as always, thanks for watching.